He turned to the side as he pulled the blanket up with trembling hands. The bruising had long since healed, but another pain would have kept Dew awake. He pretended to sleep, not moving and trying to breathe steadily while his eyes stayed wide open as he heard the door open and be closed with the utmost care. He felt as Avery laid down next to him, but he didn't react. The room fell back into absolute silence. Dew knew she was asleep already, yet his own body prevented him from doing the same. Maybe it was because of the heavy heartbeat in his chest. Maybe it was because the ring on his finger felt as if it was tightened to tear it off at some point. "It's fine," Dew told himself. "It's fine, no one will know." His sleep was unsteady. Every time he jolted up from the world of dreams, the light falling through the window slightly strengthened until it was clear the sun had risen. When it did, Dew rubbed his hurting eyes and forced himself to sit up. Of course, Avery kept sleeping like a rock. If she wasn't, Dew didn't know how to face her. Could she see through him? What hints could there be? He tugged at his shirt, knowing he would have to take it off to exchange for one without dirt stains. He hadn't changed it even before sleeping. His skin felt as if it merged with the piece of clothing. It didn't belong to him. It was like a second layer, like loose and dead skin. He wanted to tear it off. His shirt dropped to the ground, his hand reaching for the new one to cover himself with. Under the excuse of the cold, he put on another layer, but his skin still felt foreign. Then his eyes wandered off to the side, seeing the neatly folded pair of obsidian wings peek out from underneath the blanket she had placed around herself. His vision went blurry. She wouldn't know. She shouldn't know. Dew slipped out the door and locked it shut. When Frederick commented on his bad physical condition, at first Dew's heart seemed to stop for a moment until remembering he was covered in bandages, had overly long hair and maybe deep dark rings under his eyes from the lack of sleep. The others luckily silently thought they understood why he was even less talkative during the first shift, which was why they left him alone. A follow-up struggle arose in Dew after his shift had all been done. Where to go next? The room was probably empty, but what if it wasn't? He couldn't risk the gaze of someone who could read him like an open book. The corridors would be occupied. It didn't matter if the people only rushed by and wouldn't pay attention to the singular, disheveled, despicable, selfish and traitorous servant. The outside was rainy and he didn't have the royal blue cape, which wasn't even his, on him. He didn't have to decide. The choice was taken away from him. A voice sounded across the kitchen. "Done already?" His heart froze in place, his limbs going so numb he almost dropped the towel in his hand. Dew responded with a nod while turning around from leaning on the sink to face Jonah standing in the doorframe. "That's great," he exclaimed with delight. "I assume you're free as usual." Once again he nodded and the edge of his lip twitched downwards. Just moments afterwards he found himself following the boer upstairs. He had promised Dew they were on the way to his own quarter, which was located near the area where Dew remembered Frederick's hellhole to be. His head ached. To Dew's surprise, the moment Jonah opened the door to his room, there was not the slightest stench of sweat or alcohol to be smelled. The entire small room was full, but not unorganized. In a corner next to the chest, there was the tent, which had been washed and rolled up neatly. A variety of tools and weapons had been hung up on the wall opposite to the bed, on the right and on the ceiling beams with strings. Because of the diminished size of the place, the foot of the slimmer bed pointed towards the door instead of the window in the center. "Welcome to my temporary humble abode," Jonah welcomed him cheerfully, as if it was normal. "Even though I prefer the outside, this place isn't half as bad as one could imagine. I'd go as far as saying it's better than the orphanage, because I live all by myself now. Imagine sharing a place with 2 strangers. Dew felt as if he could relate. "Come," the hybrid said and pointed towards the edge of the bed. "I have some trinkets to show you." Dew obeyed, unsure if it was really him who wanted to stay, or just the other one's words which dug themselves into his skull. Jonah quickly went over to the chest and back to Dew. Other to his guest, Jonah didn't take the chair, but seated himself right next to him without leaving much space. It was suffocating. "Yeah," he said, and lifted up a round object exactly the size of his large hand. "I found this in the forest yesterday afternoon." The empty holes once filled with eyes stared at him as Dew carefully took it into his own hands and viewed the skull from all sides. Almost all sharp teeth were intact and the surface scrubbed from most of the dirt. "What's that? A cat?" he wondered. "Almost. It's a bobcat. They said they all migrated over to Rainburg, but would you look at that?" "What's a bobcat?" Dew cocked his head without taking his eyes off the object before him. He didn't want to see the blue eyes. "Imagine it as a big cat, and it's mostly brown and has very fluffy fur on its cheeks. Oh, and the tail is incredibly short and the ear tips are pointy, just like ours, and end in a little brush." "My ears." Dew flinched and immediately felt incredibly aware of the area under his hair. Jonah's thumb went to Dew's side of the head and brushed the light hair to the side to reveal his ears. The foreign flesh was cold, making Dew's breath go flat. While tracing it along the edges, he said, "It's a little more noticeable now and a little grey, but the hair hides it for the most part. I just noticed it yesterday when—" "So what's with the skull?" Dew immediately asked. Jonah laid his arm around Dew's shoulder and traced the sharp teeth with his free hand. "Well, since that's here and it looks fresh enough, I think there might be more where this one came from. Live ones, of course. I always wanted to catch a bobcat. Say, are you fond of cats?" he explained himself. "Cats are okay, I guess." Dew's head hurt the longer he looked at the leftovers of the creature Avery loved so much. Jonah huffed. "How can you not absolutely adore cats? I swear that bobcats are even cuter than house cats. Avery and I went to watch one when we were kids. Really lovely. I swear to show you the big guy when I catch him, all right?" Dew nodded, his head dizzy enough to pass out any moment now. He didn't even notice how fast time went by. Suddenly Jonah shook him by the upper thigh and reminded him of his shift. He said goodbye and hurried downstairs. Contrary to the morning, Josephine also showed up and immediately went towards him. "There you are. I didn't find you in your room, and your wife told me she didn't know where to find you either," she started, not knowing how Dew's guts clenched at her words. "Anyway, I wanted to give you my biggest thanks for watching over my dearest daughter. I hope you don't mind doing it again from time to time." "Do you have a date in mind?" Dew wanted to know. Josephine blushed as she revealed, "I fear I do, but it's only for a short time. My husband and I have an anniversary soon, and I plan on giving him another present. No tomatoes this time, though. Haha. I wonder what he'll get me. Maybe a bouquet?" Dew assumed Patrick to already be strolling through the city, frantically looking for the perfect gift for his beloved. The man was so considerate and kind, and his lack of worry perfectly balanced out Josephine's paranoia. Of course she would try and match those abilities with her own loving nature. Not only try, she definitely succeeded in being the world's most perfect mortal woman. Dew felt as if the necklace was closing up around his neck. The shift was over. He went upwards like always. Before reaching the corridor, he heard a quiet clank, then a dull knock. Another clank, another knock. Turning around the corner, he stood in the corridor with his gaze directly towards the source of the noise. Wings folded the same as this morning under the long black cape. White shirt with wide sleeves under her blue uniform, which were held together by leather straps around the lower arms. The belt, black hair in a loose knot. Her sword hit the wall next to her in regular intervals, making a sound differentiating between stone wall and wooden door. She walked slowly and carefully so that her heavy leather shoes barely made any noise. She was like a cat. Her face wore that familiar expression, a soft smile on her lips, but her dully pink eyes were empty. Dew passed her wordlessly. One more night he managed to sleep in silence next to her, pretending to sleep, ending up barely closing his eyes. They didn't see each other the whole day, not like she could see most of the time. Dew locked into the room after his shift, even though he didn't plan on staying. Then, when finding the room to be empty, he went towards Jonah's room. He was there. He was up to talk. He took him outside in the afternoon to continue practice despite his claim of not doing so. Then the night came, and Dew went back to his own room, empty, and it would stay like that. He put his pillow on the blanket and rolled it up, every movement having to be manually coordinated as if it was something he had never done before. The space in the other one's bed wasn't as much, but it was enough when the other person slung his strong arms around him, gently tugging on his shirt and burying his fingertips in his hair as if that body was some kind of trophy. Dew didn't sleep well either, but he slept. He woke up in tears, stones in his eyes which hurt him, and the recedingly white part bloodshot. It went on like this for more than a week. With every day passing, his step became more sluggish, his eyelids heavier, but at least he had something to look forward to, which was whenever he was standing by the sink alone, cleaning the plates because Kevin wasn't allowed to lend him a hand anymore. He was alone with his thoughts, with his guilt and shame and pain, but he knew he was safe as long as he was alone and had something to do, an excuse. Sometimes when he came back after running out of excuses and the fog in his mind thickened up, Jonah would hug him with a bright smile on his face, with his eyes staring at him with the intensity of a hunter and an idea for the day's activity in his mind. Sometimes Jonah would kiss him or caress his back and head while asking him about his day or talking about his own. And more than once he found himself buried underneath the other's body mass as the boar's passionate affection had to gradually lose his mind again, and dignity. He wanted to die. It was raining outside when he found himself going to the quarter assigned to him to get himself a book to read. He assumed a fairy tale book to be sitting on the table just the way he left it. Then he planned on going to the upper room of the kitchen to pass the time until night reading, trying to distract himself from the tearing on his fingers and neck, the aching of his skin and churning of organs, maybe see some colors again. He had never paid attention to colors all that much. They were there, that's all what mattered. Their absence became obvious to him gradually. At first he assumed it was the nature of fall, but when the sun had come out, not even that brought back the liveliness into his fogged-up head. His hand frantically fumbled with the keys as he tried to open the door. Soon it swung open and Dew froze on the spot. "Look who decided to show up," she said plainly. "You're one to talk," Dew muttered back and forced himself to step inside. She sat on the bed, the uniform was still on, the sword laid before her. Her dark wings were half open, as was her hair, which loosely hung over her shoulders. The glass-like eyes were directed towards the blanket she sat on. What had he done? "I understand," Avery replied. Dew spotted the book where he had guessed it and quickly went to pick it up. He turned around on the spot and marched back to the door. "Albert says she misses your company," she then recalled, making him stop. "Aren't you her company now?" "I'm her patron, not her friend. People also tend to grow tired of me quickly." Dew was looking for a sign, a change in her face, a twitching of her wing, or a word sounding off, but Avery stated it so matter-of-factly. There was no hidden message, no sarcasm, no judgment. His muscles tensed. "What's with your arms?" he asked hoarsely, looking down on the new bandages. They were fresh. A hand went to pull the white sleeve to cover it, while she responded, "Nothing important." Even though his mind begged him to leave, Dew stepped closer to her. She didn't look up, only as he sat onto the bed before her, she showed a small reaction. Then Dew realized she couldn't see at that very moment. His hands went to get hers and gently lift it towards him, her heat burning like hot iron on his cold skin. Then he pulled up the sleeve and began to carefully unwrap the cloth. Deep red gashes revealed themselves before him. The trickle of blood was thin, but some of the wounds must have been fresh. He spotted other areas which were already healing as if they had existed for several days or weeks. Who did this? Dew demanded to know with a slight shake to his voice, thinking of the strength it must have taken to injure Avery through her scales in this manner. "I did," she said. "Why?" He began wrapping the bandage back on before the blood could drip onto her. "I lied. I haven't gotten used to his voice yet." Dew stopped in motion while his eyes searched for her face, but it was empty of all emotions. "Why is he close to you? You are a god." "Because he is close to his daughter. He talks to me frequently." His hand automatically tightened around hers. "But that doesn't matter," she continued. "You left your diary here. Do you want to take it with you before you have to take a second trip?" Her voice was plain but genuine. There it was, on the table with the leather strap wrapped around it to keep it concealed, keep himself concealed from everyone but him. But why did it matter? At this point he could tear out the pages, scatter it over the entire castle, because if he already gave himself away like that, why would this bit of privacy matter? And then someone would find him, read them, and mutilate his body physically. Not because of Jonah. There was barely a word about him, but about Avery. There was so much about this man. It wouldn't change a thing. Wasn't he already mutilated? He stood up, went to the table the diary was lying on top, and grabbed it as well. Avery was tying her hair back, took the sword and stood up, weakly announcing as if he was a stranger. "I'll have to get back to her now. Have a good night." She left, and the sound of her sword hitting the wall slowly disappeared with her down the corridor. He watched the sleeping child in its tiny bed. She looked so peaceful, almost as if she hadn't screamed his ears off for the past hour. At least it had dispersed all the thoughts which had tormented Dew throughout the past 2 days, making him feel sicker to the stomach than ever. Now, in the silence, they came back. And he hated it. He hated himself. He hated himself for leaving not only with another person, that person was supposed to be her best friend as well. He had sulked himself in self-pity for being left alone for over a month, thinking it was her decision. As if it was her who made Alba believe she was in danger. He hated himself even more after realizing the new kind of hell she was stuck in, now with her rapist by her side and no way to leave. How was he supposed to make up for that? Was there even a single possibility of doing so, to crave advice and help, but who would want to show mercy to a bastard like him? He cheated on someone he had craved for years, promised to keep safe, hold even during the dark times. Someone like him deserved nothing more than to die miserably on a string. It should have happened months ago. During that time he was falsely accused of poisoning food. Now he was guilty of poisoning his marriage. For what? That man who made him feel like an object of his desire. It didn't matter if Dew wanted to or not. And for the first time since the day on the clearing, he asked himself the question, did he even want it? Then the door opened behind Dew's back and he wasn't alone anymore. "Oh, thank you so much for your help. I don't know what I would have done without you," thanked Josephine as she stepped next to him. "And she's even sleeping. How lovely." "Did you find a gift?" Dew wanted to know while standing up from his crouching position. "I sure did. It's a surprise, though." She winked mysteriously. Then Josephine continued, "You're free now if you want. What a lovely young man you are." He wanted to leave, but found himself unable to do a single step towards the exit, as guilt held him in place like shackles on his ankles and wrists. "What is it?" Josephine asked with genuine concern after a few seconds. Dew choked out, pausing before he could string together a sentence. "I need help. From you." "Oh, what is it? A gift? A project?" "It's about my relationship, and you have a good one, so I thought you might be the right person to talk to." Even though concern flashed over her face, she was delighted to help. She offered him a seat at her table, placed her head in her hands, and looked at him, ready to listen. "My partner, she's going through a pretty tough time right now, and I didn't notice until 2 days ago," Dew began hesitantly, trying to find the right words, sensible enough not to pull all blame on him, but not too soft for him to talk it down, like a coward. I didn't feel she gave me enough affection and thought she was trying to avoid me, so stupid me, accepted the first affection I was offered. Even though he was looking down at the table, he felt her dark eyes staring holes into his aching head. "What does that imply?" she asked calmly, but the upcoming rage shone through her facade. His nails dug themselves into the back of his hands. It would never bleed as much as she did. "I hooked up with her childhood friend 2 weeks ago," he confessed. Dew expected her to raise her hand against him, punish him for his sins. He wished she did, because feeling the pain might make him feel as if part of his sin had been paid off. Maybe it could make him feel like this was his body, this was his doing and not his body being a puppet to someone else, because he knew it was his fault. Right? There was nothing. She didn't even speak, she didn't scream, not even sigh. Josephine continued staring down at him, and it was a punishment worse than the pain, because it elongated the disgrace hovering over his name. It wasn't even his name, Avery had given it to him. Seconds passed, which felt like days or even years, and finally Dew snapped and cried out, "What can I do to make up for it?" Her face was wiped of all emotions. It was as if the sun had vanished behind clouds and had been extinguished completely. "Does she know?" she plainly replied. "She knows I haven't been in our room for the past 2 weeks, but you completely left her for another person," Josephine called out in compressed fury. "How many times have you?" "5, he choked out. Speaking it out loud made him draw back out of his own skin in disgust. Had it really been 5 times? Josephine's voice cut through him as hard as he deserved as she spat, "Tell her." And then, "You'll be lucky if she kills you the moment after. Once is bad enough. 5 times under this law is punished by being skinned alive. I thought out of all people you would have been more reasonable than this."